Spending your days in a seclusion normally wouldn't be that bad if you were trying to relax. All the time in the world to unwind, putting your stress into a box that gets dumped into the bottomless pit of your mind, and forgetting your troubles until they smack you in the face with a 12-foot steel beam. Unfortunately for one certain boy currently hiding from most of his strange siblings, sitting around and hidden in Clyde's cave wasn't doing him any favors. Lincoln was slouched down in his seat in a large couch, a mix of depression and anxiety ever so present in his eyes as he watched the news report, talking about the recent events of the Full House gang. He viewed it as while the city was 2 days prior, disguised as some kind of random kid running errands. Too true to their word, the girls had released unedited footage of the fight at the docks, only showing parts where Ace was managing his own and the event where Deuce was beginning to raining grenades on them to save them. The oldest siblings were quick to label two of the traitors with High Card, Strong Suit, and Queen of Diamonds, promising to bring them justice if any means necessary. This turned to let the police issuing a warrant for their arrest, as well as the co-conspirations affiliated with Ace and Deuce. As much as Lincoln saw it coming, it still made his heart ache that his own sisters would be all ready to turn on him. It all installed the thoughts that, outside of Lily, they probably never loved him to begin with. They were likely tolerated by his presence until he was the best at finding criminals. Lily assured him that it wasn't the case, although even if she was unsure of what caused the girls to snap. Still, the Grenadier was still outright pissed for being framed by the media, offhandedly challenging her ex-sisters to try and bring them in. If Clyde or Ronnie Ann were concerned about the law coming for them, they didn't show it. Ronnie Ann had been issued a warrant quite a few times over her career. The charges were inevitably dropped when it was revealed that her victims were far from innocent. As for One-Eyed Jack, he distracted himself by keeping the tabs on the ever-loud siblings. He was also so confident in his and Ace's ability to evade the police as well. In spite of Lincoln's mood, there was some good news as the boy shifted his attention to some of the news to the other part of the kids' social circle, playing cards at a table. Liam leaned back in his chair as he calmly stared at the cards on his deck, his cowboy hat hanging at the backside of the chair as he kicked his spurs up the table. Rusty had his beads of sweat developing around his forehead, letting Lincoln know he probably had a bad hand. If he had to be honest, Rusty looked like he had one of those old-styled musicians with a cape, eye mask, and fedora of all things. It shouldn't be surprising that the curly-haired boy wore a tux with several card emblems etched to the cuffs. He always tried to present himself as a ladies' man. Perhaps the only oddity was the chosen color. A black and white and even red tux was pretty common in these days, but a green one? Okay, to be fair, it had some black patterns to it, but Lincoln could not hope but to wonder how Rusty managed to keep himself hidden, unless they were in a forest. He's known for the Mirage Master, pretty bland, and Lincoln and knew Rusty would have picked up Doctor Strange, but someone was already using that name, and Rusty was sure as heck didn't have PhD. Planning to over the last three redheads, Zack was now, how Lincoln could put it, looked like a grenadier that he saw in the video game before, almost similar to Lily, but with a different layout. Wearing what Lincoln assumed was a tactical vest, several odd-looking spears were hooked to the front, sides, and the launcher of shorts of lazily hanging by the strap of the head of the chair. Zack might have been a nerd in every sense of the meaning, but it was far easy to see why he gets A's in chemistry. The 10-year-old could turn piles of scrap into working bombs, and as the little guy proclaimed, all he needed was some good metal, chemicals, and a working timer. In secret, he would test his devices to achieve a good set radius. Explosive power, ease of use. He also had to be very careful of how he made the bombs. Knowing how Iran Twitch could blow them up, or ruin an entire batch. However, all of his bombs weren't just plain old explosives. Zach also made some smoke bombs, flashbangs, and worst of all, sharp old mines. That made sense as to Lincoln once recalled one time Lana swore she spotted the boy at the junkyard while running an errand. Might also explain why the boy's hair had the spiky look to it. Since he didn't have a name for himself, everyone just decided to give it Zach as the title of the Mad Bomber. Lily suggested a punny name like Junkrat due to the fact that his bombs were literally made out of trash, only seemed to earn a glare from the supposed partner. And let's be honest, after Zach blew up a few things, he acts like he just took 5 adrenaline shots and starts laughing like a maniac. A little unhinged, but the level of unpredicted chaos would be useful against organized team like the Full House. Lincoln squinted his eyes a little at Zach, seeing faded patches of smoke intertwined with the red spiky follicles. Zach must really know his stuff if he hasn't blown up yet. I thought, though, I imagine he nearly did a few times. A feminine groan got their attention. "You're not seriously watching that old thing again, are you?" Lincoln twisted his body around to face Lily, who shuffled with a tired gaze. She was still dressed in her pajamas, despite it being around noon. His lips straightened into a small frown. "You didn't sleep that much." "Not that, after patrolling all night. Lily, I told you it was too dangerous to go out to be with your sisters looking for us." Lincoln turned back to the TV. "Not to mention the police." Lily threw her hands up in irritation. "I was with the ace assassin, wasn't I?" She stopped at the back of the couch, turning before she fell over on top of the seats. "Not like we found any clues of them anyway. Crime's been rather low, surprisingly." Lincoln nodded. "I guess the girls might have scared the rest, given what they did to Card Shark." Lily gave a small nod, gazing upon the half-interest upside-down TV. She blinked a couple times as the small memory came to the forefront of her mind. "Oh," she dug into her pocket before pulling out 2 sheets of folded paper. "I also found these while we were out yesterday." Lincoln raised an eyebrow in confusion before taking them from his sister, inspecting the sheets. They were clearly ripped from some building that he noted the dust from the torn edges. Unfolding them, Lincoln glowered a little as he stared back far off into the picture of himself in his ace-savvy uniform. Below the picture was a large cash reward being offered of a long charge listed as reckless vandalism, and the other paper was the same, with the same lone image of Deuce scanning for something on top of the roof. This wasn't mentioned on the news. Given how fresh the paper looked, the police must have passed them out recently. If you ever want to get normally unwillingly volunteers to help in a pointless search, just put up the wanted posters offering a large sum of money. Typically, most wouldn't bother looking for the hero who was appear only when they wanted to be seen. But to chase a ghost would be nothing more than a waste of time and money. But for a $100,000 reward, might as well treat it like the lottery and hope for the best. And there was always the option that they could always increase the amount to attract more. "This isn't helping, Lily," the 11-year-old said in irritation. "No, but at least you won't be surprised some mercenaries or whatever decide to come after us." Lincoln blew hot air out of his nose. "At least they won't think that there's 2 people they're looking for." He rubbed his eyelids and they started to feel like sandbags. Lily gave a half smirk. "Guess I'm not the only one who isn't getting any sleep." The 7-year-old lifted her legs, pivoting herself so she was lying on her stomach while facing her brother. "Want to talk about it?" The 11-year-old shook his head. "Just same old worry of waking up to see one of my sisters ready to kill me in my sleep." "Lincoln," Lily frowned, losing her joking demeanor. "They're not going to find us. I mean, you said to yourself that none of our sisters knew you or Clyde made this cave. I never knew of this place until Clyde brought us here." "That may be, but we don't know if they're resourceful. We only have half as much of gathering than we would back at home. Not to mention Lisa has this better way of computers. The boy then grabbed the remote and flicked the channels to watch some old movie. Not that they had any intention of watching it. Call me paranoid, but I stand out too much for my own good. Hiding my hair is easy, but my teeth... Lincoln rubbed his oversized choppers subconsciously. His fingers and sliding down to his jawline with a small rubble scar was still heartening. Lily eyed it, a small migraine developing instinctively. During the time Lincoln was out cold from his beating, she did some quick surgery to remove the tracking devices Lisa had inserted into all of her siblings in the event of one of them was kidnapped. That was normally a good safety measure, now proving to be the glaring weakness, and the grenadiers set to ensure that the girls wouldn't be able to track their movements. Another benefit from having this genius roommate was having an acknowledge to remove the foreign objects under the skin. Lincoln's was easy to remove since his was located just to the lower half side of his jaw, and him under heavy anesthesia made it painless. Lily's was tougher to remove. Lisa easily had to remove it, but installed it with the temple. Since Clyde was pretty busy, she was forced to perform a little surgery herself. The 7-year-old spent grueling 2 hours cutting open her head, biting furiously into the bill of her cap to keep it from screaming in agony, as Lily silently prayed that she didn't screw up something important. The device was successfully removed, at the expense of Lily now being forced to deal with something flaring headaches every now and then. Her hat also had permanent tooth marks as well. Still 2 hours to remove the tracker was still good enough time for the rest of the Louds to make it back to the base and potentially fire up the scanner. She didn't want Lincoln to worry even further, but all Lily could do was just hope that she destroyed hers before that happened. If it helps, Lily sat up before scooting closer to him. Clyde's been watching them, though, through several public camera systems. He still can't see access to the ones at home, but from what look of everywhere else, and looking through the areas where they usually would go, they seem to be acting normal. The last word was spoken with malice. But what are we gonna do? We can't just sit aside and let them frame us as the bad guys. I know, Lincoln replied, uncertainty ever present in this form. I want to set the record straight, but at the same time I don't want to put them in a bad light too. Lily's face contorted with displeasure, but Lincoln continued on before she could spit more fire. Just think about it. Everyone in the city looks up to us to protect them. If we did the same thing our sisters did, then people would get confused and lose trust in all of us. Lincoln gave a short pause to let it sink in. Lily raised a finger to refute this statement, but couldn't find the more she fought over it. When I first became savvy, I swore to protect the innocent as best I can. I don't like the ways they are now, but it's better than that city doesn't think that the whole team is crazy. The 11-year-old boy glanced over at the TV, flickering the channel again. Now it showed some talk show host giving some disparaging comment about Ace himself and his leadership. The boy furrowed his brows before muting the TV. That doesn't mean I don't want to do something full about it. More importantly, I don't want to leave to have the girls deal with where everyone pretty much can see it, and if any of one of the villains is up to no good, then the chances are the rest of the full house will come out to stop them. Lincoln felt a pair of arms resting on top of his head. So you want to run an interposition mission, Lamo? Ronnie Ann stated. Didn't think we were up to be that bold. Wait, if we do that, what about the bad guy? Lily asked. Lincoln hummed and fought. Depending on who it is, as well, they can let them slip away or deal with them later. Not to ruin anyone else's time, I've been looking over some camera footage and another information and... Get to the point, Clyde, Ronnie Ann ordered. I was, the boy frowned. Wildcard Willie is on the move, and I think he's planning a heist tonight. Lincoln raised an eyebrows in surprise. Well, that was certainly a stroke of luck. Willie wasn't as bad as they say, card countess, but she could still be a pain to deal with. The full house had clashed on him a few times, usually being the villain, but he always managed to get away. As unpredictable as he was, Ace couldn't account for everything the man would throw at him. However, with the new full house, may not be so forgiving. "Well, bro, what do you think?" Lily asked in a serious tone. Lincoln bit his lip again and mulled over his options, growing more nervous by the second as he felt everyone staring at him. He didn't want to admit he wasn't quite ready to face his other sisters again, but at the same time, he didn't want any of his team members to let this opportunity go to waste. If they did go, would it be the first time seeing his other sisters since they started their coup? Awkwardness aside, no doubt anyone could expect a brawl to take place. But what would happen then? What would have happened if Lincoln and the others managed to win? The ace-savvy crime fighter doubted his sisters would go down that easily, and more likely to work as a unit than individually like last time. Locking them up wasn't much of an option either, since because they like it or not, Lincoln needed to get to them if they wanted to be able to deal with that serious threat. And what if they lost? Images of Lincoln lying on the floor in agony with barely a breath to spare flashed through his mind, painting a similar picture of his teammates. The sinister laugh of his other sisters rang in his ears like an unholy noise from the deepest parts of hell, making the 11-year-old want to scream out in terror. A calm hand rested on his shoulder, making Lincoln aware that his only surroundings but the rapid breaths he didn't even know what he was giving. "This isn't a 1 versus 9, Lincoln. You have a team now," Lily smiled sincerely. "We're always ready to back you up, buddy," Clyde proclaimed. "And we're not going to let them have a repeat of that fight like you last had. They deserve what they had coming to them," Ronnie Ann hummed, lightly massaging Lincoln's hair. "Yeah, they'll learn not to underestimate us," Rusty boasted. And speaking of underestimating, he turned his head towards his opponents, showing a deck full of aces. Liam had his mouth open, angered and shocked, while Zach threw the cards in the air. "What? How? I had a jack, a queen, and a king!" the shortest redhead yelled. "All about misdirection, fellas," Rusty smirked, covering his cards in hand before opening them, showing them nothing but empty palms. "Show off," Liam groaned, folding his arms. Zach banged his head on the table in frustration. Lincoln gave a slight chuckle to the nervousness that he felt without disappearing. Maybe they did really have a chance. He and Lily knew their sisters were better than anyone, but aside from Clyde, there was an advantage that could be held, forcing the girls to deal with the opponents they're unfamiliar with. Not to mention they'd be likely overconfident at having to fight a bunch of kids. Hypocritical as it is, since none of them were legal age. Oh, and how Lincoln would prove them wrong. Right. Lincoln gently took Ronald's hand off of his head. "If anyone's in favor, then it's clear what we'll have to do." He stood on the couch. "We'll go after Wildcard Willie, but the real objective's waiting for the full house to arrive." "What do we do to then?" Liam asked. "Just expect a bunch of fighting and some name-calling and lots of collateral damage. But during it all, I hope we can find answers to figure out why all this has happened." Lincoln paused, an uneasy feeling overcoming him. "The way they acted that night, I just have this odd feeling that there is just something else going on. If they had any problems with me, they'd be the first one to let me know. My sisters aren't exactly good at hiding their aggression." Lincoln closed his eyes for a moment, letting the images of the savage beating and playing in his head. "They didn't hesitate to try and kill me." He looked at his team. "And I'm pretty sure they would do the same to you. So just be careful, okay, guys?" The rest of the kids voiced their approvals in illusion before filing out of the room to make some last-minute arrangements. After all, the last person left, Lincoln glanced back at the muted TV. High Card was on the screen explaining something to a reporter, no doubt giving more false information about Ace Savvy's betrayal, or how they have yet to find him. Given a low sigh, the loud shut off the TV off. No matter how much he had tried to shake it, a sense of dread was constantly present to his stomach. Fighting with his own family and the scale was something the boy could never predict it. nor wish it. But with his mind already set yet a plan beginning to form, Lincoln really hoped to defuse the whole ensuing quarrel before someone else feels the same pain he is currently dealing with. Unfortunately for Lincoln, who is in his dreams, was not the same boy who walked into school with his best friends that morning. Dreams and reality were two different fields of play. As Lincoln was beginning to understand, as the Loud was growing more and more accustomed to looking through different perspectives, he left himself growing envious of his savvy persona. At least he had the courage to face his sisters head on, something the real Lincoln lacked. Even so, the fearful Lincoln could at least say his worries were about his school was dwindling. His social circle did a good job on keeping him away from his sisters, aside from that last Thursday, but he didn't hold that against them. At least one friend shared a class with him daily. It was a 9 to 5 operation. They were taking their job seriously to the point where Lincoln couldn't even use the bathroom without a buddy watching outside of the bathroom. In most circumstances, it would be annoying after hearing Lola singing in the opposite restroom. It wasn't anything but to Lincoln. A faint smile formed on Lincoln's face. With his friends always having his back, maybe he'd actually get the curious to face at least one of his sisters. Speaking of siblings, the middle child started to wonder how Lily was faring. He hadn't seen her since he left the hospital, but he sure as heck wasn't about to come home to his house with his other sisters around. He didn't doubt that she missed him greatly, and he to her. Speaking of which, there was one other sister who felt like she was going to crack under the pressure. Lynn was nearing the end of her science class, feeling rather uncomfortable and fidgety about the appearance and choice of clothing. She brushed some hair back of her ear, shifted it back a bit to make sure her hair, now just ran past her shoulders, didn't get caught between the seat and her back. In many cases, the tomboy would dominate when under the gun to score a win. But even when the subject matter wasn't anything competitive, she liked the attention, almost as such as she likes winning. This time, though, she felt like Drew's short stick. The girls decided, and after rock, paper, scissors match, that the young athlete would be the first one to break the ice with Lincoln. Lynn immediately objected due to her well-known aggression after aforementioned competitiveness and the injury she inflicted on Lincoln. However, Luann was also hesitant to give her past behavior, not to mention being almost twice as tall as Lincoln, would add to her imitation factor. The comedian was almost uncertain if Lincoln would keep the protection she gave him on Thursday in consideration. In order to make Lynn appear less intimidating and more relaxed, the girls who had her wear her jeans, bright-colored hoodie, have her hair down, to practice giving him a warm smile. Naturally, the Jacques didn't even think of anything was wrong with her smile. No, scratch that. Her missing teeth did ruin a bit, but Lynn did through it. It still looked good. However, Lynn stated it could make Lincoln feel less secure than he really was with a crooked smile. And besides, who wants a smile that has the gaps of where the teeth would obviously be? Not with, however, with a frustrated groan. She accepted her conditioning and felt rather ridiculous about it at all. It was one thing about it, but not being able to wear her favorite jerseys, but baggy clothing was not something Lynn liked. She occasionally felt that she might trip on one of her pant legs and constantly had to pull the sleeves up to keep her hands free. Perhaps the easiest part was how simple the plan was. Let Lincoln see a form of her in the distance before calmly walking up and trying to start a casual conversation. On paper, a monkey could do it, but this way was things easier than said than done. The biggest issue for Lynn was that the fact that she and Lincoln would only see each other in school during lunch a few days out of the week. Like today, even more so, Lynn shuddered at the thought. The crowd in the room would instantly draw unwanted attention. If Lincoln were to freak out, last thing she needed to catch another food tray in the face, in front of the quarter of the student body. Glancing back at the clock, Jacques realized she had just 5 minutes to put aside whatever doubts she had before putting the plan into action. Lynn grasped at her sleeves, pulling them back as her foot tapped out vigorously. Stupid hoodie! What the heck is wrong with my other shirts? And it's spring! The 13-year-old growled in frustration. She could feel her arms starting to come damp from the heat. Lynn actually liked to sweat, seeing as it's proof of a good workout. She just hated sitting still and sweating like she was in a goddamn oven. It almost made her lose focus on the test that she had just finished. On the bright side, at least her legs weren't suffering. A buzzing in her pocket felt Lynn that knew someone sent her a text. Reaching in her pocket, her eyes traced over the message. Nervous? Luann. Lynn began trembling and fumbling her response, quickly putting her phone into vibrate once she had done a few ticks echo somewhat loudly. More than can you imagine, Lynn. Sorry about this. I just didn't think Lincoln would be ready to see me again so soon. Luann. It's fine. Not any better than you are. Just wish I didn't have to wear this dumb hoodie. Lynn. Do you think you can handle it? I mean, I'm not saying you can't, but let's say I'm second-guessing myself a lot and want to talk with him too. Luann. Lynn frowned a bit. This had been going back and forth with Luann since the weekend. Lou, I got this. I don't like the fact that I might get hit in the face again with gross lunch food, but I'll take that chance anyway if it means letting Link see we aren't going to get him. Lynn. The bell rang, signalizing the obturation sister affection. I gotta go, but see if this works. You're next in line. Lynn. Good luck. Luann. I don't have four-leaf clover. Lynn. The brunette stuffed her phone into her pocket, hoping the last text would get at least something to get the comedian to smile at the inside joke. Grabbing her books, Lynn made her short trip to her locker before heading down the lunchroom. The closer she got to the cafeteria, the more unsettling feeling in her gut made herself known, growing to the point where veins were pumping out of constant flow of anxiety. Upon reaching the doors, Lynn felt her legs lock up as she stared through the house windows. She couldn't spot any traces of the white hair amongst the various students of multiple grades, and that made Lynn flinch unconsciously. A chill descended down her spine. If Lynn wanted to make this plan work, she would need to make contact with him first. If it were the other way around, Lincoln may want to sneak out while she wasn't looking. To make matters more complicated, none of the sisters and Ronnie Ann told Lincoln's other friends about what they were going to do. They were going to get too close to him and risk the loud figuring out both groups were communicating with each other. Plus, Ronnie Ann admitted that Lincoln's other friends would be rather poor at finging this knowledge of this agreeing meeting. In the stroke of luck, Lynn darted her eyes to the left where the food was, spotting her brother, Clyde, and three of his geeky friends walking from the hallway from the lunch lady with trays full of food. She tracked them throughout the room and then sat at the table, not too far from the windows, immediately conversing about something Lynn could likely less care about. Lynn wasn't so concerned about any mean looks she might get once she strolled in. Most of the student body didn't care, but Lynn's friends still refused to talk to her, only being aloof and giving hateful glares nowadays. Ronnie Ann was nowhere in sight, much to Lynn's disappointment, although unconfirmed. Ronnie Ann claimed that Lincoln was more at ease when she was around. Lynn could only guess that it was due to what happened the day before he was sent to the hospital. The fifth-grade tomboy soon regretted saying that she was nearly swept up in a sister NATO asking nonstop questions about her and Lincoln's dating. Even more so, Lynn was armed with the thought that Ronnie Ann's very presence would help smooth things over. However, studying his face, Lynn could even see that Lincoln appeared fine despite Ronnie Ann's absence. Not to mention that he seemed to have gotten used to due to the fact that his sisters were in school. Her eyes were drawn to the black cuff cast of his left arm, catching a small movement of his fingers poking out of it. Her stomach sank to a subtle reminder as to why she shouldn't be doing this. Maybe she should just go and eat from outside like she usually does on these days. Silently watching her brother from a distance, after all, why would he even want to talk to the same girl who wrestled and even jumped on him without warning, tossing sports balls in directions when she knew he wasn't looking? And why the heck would Lincoln even bother talking to Lynn after she broke his arm over a little mistake? Lynn curled her hands into fists, her brows knitting as she started glaring back at her resolve. Lisa spent a good little while doing her homework, figuring out the best way to tackle their brother problem. It was when Miss Sporty really was going to spit on like Lisa did to her face and call it quits. Lynn was never one to take a challenge lightly in all the years of competing, no matter how she stacked the odds were. Sure, the circumstances were different, but right now, her main goal was to win Lincoln's trust, or at least test the waters on how long he could tolerate her presence before getting too unnerved to speak. Okay, Lynn, as long as you don't go in anything to scare him, this should be easy. The jock both spoke to herself. Just gonna stroll in and smile, and and ask how his day is. And don't look at his arm, Lynn added, although her confident tone faltered when she had found herself staring at the obvious injury. Pushing the door open, the young athlete calmly walked through the masses of students making their way towards the boys who failed to notice her presence. A gurgling sound from Lynn's stomach made her pause halfway towards the targets. Looking into the lunch line, a new idea popped to her head. Surely they wouldn't mind her eating with them for a few minutes, right? No, the cops were too busy tear gassing him to know what he has been doing up there, Liam then told the other boys, who were in the mix of half listening and half eating absent-mindedly. Ellis screamed for a whole 6 months every time he opened his eyes. It was funny after a while, but then it got sad, but then it got funny again, because we all found him trying to put the moves on the cow. The farm boy let out a short torkle. The look on his face when we gave him was priceless. Doesn't that sound like a little extreme for the police to gas him when he was just shooting birds? Zach asked. He technically had to have the gun with him to do that, and it doesn't take a genius to know what someone is firing a gun like crazy is against the law, Clyde inquired, biting into his sandwich. Yeah, if I remember, Auntie's saying it had something to do with that, Liam replied. Is your cousin a little kind of weird? Rusty added, light snort. I mean, what else did he do? Get run over by his own lawnmower? Actually, he did, Liam replied, biting into his sub. It was one of those movers you could ride in them. It didn't get cut too deep, but most of his body was covered in them. Rusty gave a surprising blink. I was joking, but okay, he shrugged. Lincoln stayed silent as he ate. He was listening to Liam's tale, but didn't have anything to say that was already said. The longer he stared at his fray-headed red friends, the more he began to understand why he was developing the personas he had in his dreams. Liam being a cowboy from his farmer aspects, very noteworthy, though Lincoln thought about it. Didn't the cowboys live on a ranch? He guessed that Liam's farm could have counted since he had animals like chickens and pigs, and even if he saw a few cows at some point too. With Rusty, there had been numerous times where he acted like he knew something, but he actually didn't, normally playing around with whatever he said in order to save the fence. He also brags about knowing certain people to get things done, like fancy duds from his dad. That would explain the tux. As well as a few other times, Rusty did have the credible source. It was also everyone's benefit. It could go either way with that guy. For Zach, Lincoln had recalled one time that the boy did blow up a science lab after unknowingly mixing two volatile chemicals. He distinctively remembered of how bad his hair looked covered in smoke, a real big bald spot at the center of his head, and it was fizzing out in all directions. A flash of guilt flowed through Lincoln as he recalled how the girl, what was her name, Kat? Anyway, Kat complained about being part of her hair burnt off, although it still flowed down to the middle of her back. Zach was understandably upset at Lincoln for the last of the day. It ended when Lincoln took a batch of salty pies to the face, though because of this incident, it was one-time thing. It did actually felt a little odd that Zach was a true demolitionist. Unlike Lily, Zach used real bombs. You know, the kind of stuff that would leave you in so many pieces that they would have to glue back together in hell. Lincoln supposed that Zach in his dreams grew interested in those explosives. Following the incident, He could definitely make the deadly matchup with Lily. Distraction and life explosives. Good luck walking away with all your limbs still attached. Temporarily moving away from his dreams, Lincoln absently took another bite of his sub. Wested lazily looked around the lunchroom. He spotted a few students and he knew in his class, like Girl Jordan, Molly, Chandler, Arnie, and Andrew. The rest of the students he knew were in his class, but he didn't remember their names, or older or younger kids who weren't in his grade, well, besides certain loud sister calmly walking towards their table with the food tray in her hands. Lincoln's mind stopped when a hard like a train suddenly activating its emergency brake. Doubling back to the right, he thought that he was just seeing things for a minute. His heart began to quiver anxiously as he confirmed that it was indeed one of his sisters coming up to them. Even worse, it was the strongest one. Lynn started walking up slower upon seeing Lincoln, making eye contact with her. She noted how his body was tensing up like a deer or a rabbit looked frightened upon nearby human approaching it, to which the brunette was already getting ready to bolt as soon as he felt threatened. Okay, he's looking at me. Don't do anything to make him run. And now the others are looking too. The young athlete sighed awkwardly. The general chatter in the lunchroom filled with silence between herself and the boys. As Lynn stood 5 feet away from their table, Lynn studied both of each of the boys without much of a word. Clyde and Liam were rather surprised that she came up. Both of them constantly peeking looks at Lincoln and show how they were being more concerned about him. Rusty and Zach were utterly confused as this wasn't part of their normal agreement with Lincoln. Lynn tried not to stare at him for too long. The poor boy was on the verge of having another anxiety attack. Every few seconds he would give a tremble or two, all of which were caught by Lynn's watchful gaze. The athlete couldn't tell whether Lincoln was trying hard to mask the fact that he was scared, or debating on whether or not he should make up an excuse to get as far away from her as possible. During the time she wasn't looking directly at him, Lynn could tell that Lincoln was slowly growing interested. The boy's gut was telling him to secretly get out of his seat and calmly walk towards the exit, then run like hell once he got past the door. However, Lincoln's brain was telling it that such movement would be impossible. He knew that Lynn was much faster than he could ever hope to be. As him trying to escape his faithful beating was enough proof, heck, she was even strong enough to whoop not only him, but everyone else at the table. Still have the energy to spare. Lincoln was really wishing Ronnie Ann was here. At least she could stand the fight against the terror standing in front of him. Lincoln stared down at his food to avoid looking at his sister. Last time she was this close, I hit her with my tray. Even in his own head, his voice sounded like a whisper. The fingers of his right hand gazed down at the side of the tray and thought, she ran off last time. Maybe I could do it again if she tries anything. Yeah, that may work. The boy bit his lip at the confidence and began to fade. But it might have been in the moment. She's probably mad about me about it too. His eyes widened in terror. What if she's there to pay me back for that? Or what if she wants to break my other arm? Wait, why is her hair down? Lincoln thought of this as his thought processes grinded to crawl. It was fortunate that everyone, unlike the previous times where Lincoln only knew fear only came near to one of any siblings, besides the youngest, there was a layer of confusion blocking his anxiety from taking complete control. Aside from her hair being down, Lincoln also noticed that she was wearing a hoodie and jeans in a favor of her usual jersey and shorts. Now that he thought of it, she wasn't even wearing them either when she visited the clinic. Looking back at her hair, Lincoln couldn't remember any point of his life he had seen Lynn's hair free flowing willingly. Sure, there were some nights where he must have caught a glimpse of Lynn without her ponytail after she just got out of the shower, but usually she likes to keep it up when she slept, as the time they had shared a room together was enough proof. Even when they were younger, Lynn always had a part of keeping her hair tied up in pigtails, like Lana once it grew out enough. The boys' mind wandered back to the day when they had the school assembly, when Luann actually helped them. She was dressed in her usual skirt and blouse, but her tight brown hair was down past the middle of her back. And if she had had a hard enough, her fake flower wasn't even on her shirt that day. Like Lincoln knew that Luann never had let her hair down without a reason, even while sleeping. He honestly didn't understand why they didn't. Ronnie Ann once told him that she undoes her ponytail before bed, since it feels uncomfortable sleeping it from the mass of knotted hair. Plus, both sisters' ponytails were positioned directly at the back of their heads, opposed to Ronnie Ann's hanging hers near her shoulder. Where they were going to be again? Oh, that's right, Luann's hair. There was once a time he did witness a sight, similar to what Lincoln had witnessed today. Luann, who had been a bit of a slump due to being in a position of his older sisters called the friend zone. He didn't exactly know what it meant or what it was wrong with it since he had plenty of friends. But the girls was that Luann really liked this guy named Benny, but he didn't feel the same way and preferred to stay friends. If the middle child had to guess it how long ago it had been around the time that he had been crushing on a girl named Paige, which was about a month or so before Ronnie Ann started picking on him. And that was like 9 months ago? Honestly, he forgot about Paige after Ronnie Ann revealed that she really did like him. So Lincoln supposed that he was spared from whatever pain Luann was feeling. Either way, Lincoln at least knew that Luann would have her hair down because she was too depressed to care about her overall appearance.